Gentlemen, welcome to the Evening Jones. Says it right there at the bottom now. I apologize for taking so long to get on. The technology and I were not having the best time getting along, but I am here. If you are watching at theeveningjones.com, what I need you to do is log in. Use your Twitter profile, your Facebook profile, whatever kind of profile you got, go ahead and use it. Once you do that, you can participate in our chat room. You can also send in your questions. Type them out. I'll put them up on the screen like old-fashioned like. Or you got a webcam and headphones, like I got a webcam and headphones. You can talk to me like I am talking to you right now. I generally give you guys an hour. We're 15 minutes late in starting, and y'all might just get 45 minutes. I don't really have no great explanation for you as to why it is that it might play out that way, but I'm here to tell you, all you might get out your boy today is good 45. I don't really feel like I have any like really quirky or interesting stories to tell you from the week, which really means I'm not living right in a lot of ways, but I don't have them. I normally kind of like to start in those ways just to give you a little build up, before we get to the questions. I guess I will just go to the questions. Am I going to do this? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do this? Did you really ask me this on Nas' birthday? Did you really ask me if 15 years later, if I'm going to take over Ether? Are you really going to ask me to do this knowing we recording this on Nas' birthday? Y'all going to do this? Come on, man. Come on now. My feeling on this is documented. But I feel like you just kind of being out and out disrespectful right now to the little homie Nas. And I want to as I will not answer this question on Nas' birthday, I do have something I want you guys to understand about Nas and me and Nas. Because I know a lot of you Nas stans, y'all get real defensive when I make jokes about Nas, right? And then I make jokes about Nas, and then y'all wind up calling me coons and all kinds of other stuff like that. And then I got to block you on the Twitter, and then down the line, you ultimately come to regret it because you understand that you just got sensitive about Nas. Because people who love Nas are so defensive of Nas. They're so defensive of Nas. They wrap their arms around Nas in a way that very few fan bases do with their rapper. And part of what makes it interesting is Nas isn't really asking people to do this. They just do it of their own volition. Now, all that being said, I feel like in the fact that I occasionally tell these jokes about Nas, what gets lost is my belief that Nas is like the illest, right? I mean, Nas is so dope. He is such a good rapper. Like some people are just absolutely born to rap. And Nas is one of those people who's born to rap. And he has an amazing gift for writing these incredibly vivid verses, these fantastic stories, and doing it on like super word economy. Like he's so good at taking small snapshots to capture like so much, right? He's so dope. He's so dope. He just does things that make you laugh at him. Right? Some ill-fated attempts at trying to move into some lanes that weren't really his lanes. Like those things that happen. And just, the general idea that Nas, he's not so great with the beat selection. Now, part of what's interesting about the idea that Nas is not so great with the beat selection is that Nas' first album is one of the most incredible pieces of production that anyone has ever heard. It's track after track after track of heat from, a range of producers, right? It's all heat. It's all heat. Like you realize how dope Nas had to be the age he was, and they were doing Illmatic. And having Primo and Q-Tip and LES and all these cats are like doing the beats for your first album. And you're every bit as good as the beats. Every single bit as good as the beats. Right? I mean, and he is, like I say, born to rap. Absolutely born to rap. But see, the thing is, the born to rap guy is generally not born to become like rap superstar in that way. And so we saw like Biggie rise and all those cats, and we saw Nas try to keep up with them. And it just really didn't work. But I feel like Nas, at this point in his career, has really kind of comfortably come into a lane that's good for him, right? Like you talk about Stuck in the 90s on the on Life is Good. And I thought Life is Good. I really like Life is Good. There's like a 3-track stretch I wasn't really rocking with it. But overall, I thought it was really good. And I felt like it was at once like nostalgically 90s, but on the other hand, didn't feel like it was going back in time per se. So good for Nas, right? I mean, because that's tricky to find your lane. And Nas seems to have found his lane. I just hope he's paid those people off, because I know that was causing that was causing Nas. I mean, pay your taxes, man. I'm being real with all of y'all right now, man. Pay your taxes, man, because you wind up not paying your taxes, and you got to do all kinds of stuff you swore you would never do. Never do. Pay your taxes. Appreciate the question. Let's see what else we got here. Bad versus Thriller. Which is better? This is interesting. I actually clicked on this because my brain saw the question and instantly said Off the Wall versus Thriller. And I was going to go into everything that makes that a fascinating question that kind of spells out the fact that there's two Americas, right? But Bad versus Thriller. I would say the answer is Thriller. I don't love Thriller like other people do. I think the B side of Thriller is a hell of a side of the record. I think the A side of Thriller starts with Wanna Be Starting Something, which is probably my favorite Michael Jackson song. And then there is not another song on the A side that I need to hear. There isn't. Bad, dude, the thing about Bad is that Mike is better on Bad than he is on Thriller, but Thriller is better than Bad because Quincy Jones had kind of lost fastball. Like we were talking about this on the radio show today. If we start talking about Bad, there's so much heat on Bad. Like there are so many great songs on Bad, but you go back and listen to Bad, and I mean, first of all, that old corny ass title song, "Your Bud Is Mine." Yeah, I mean that didn't do anything good for anybody. It really didn't. But think about this: they spun 9 singles off of Bad. I Just Can't Stop Loving You, which, I mean, whatever. Bad, I'm not really here for Bad, right? Now, the Way You Make Me Feel, heat. Man in the Mirror, heat. Dirty Diana, heat. Another Part of Me, heat. Smooth Criminal, heat. Leave Me Alone, not bad. Liberian Girl, heat. That is a remarkable level of heat for an album that so many of us don't think is that good. I struggle to explain this, but I'm firmly in the camp of people that's like Bad has a lot of really good songs, but it just ain't there. Like, what's better, Bad or Dangerous? I'd probably say Dangerous and Bad might have better songs. And I can't think of an album that I can say this about in the way that I'm saying this about Bad. Like I'm all of a sudden going into a place that I hadn't been before. Like I'm having this idea right in front of you right now. I mean, this is how we think. Now, Dangerous is good. Dangerous got Who Is It? And Who Is It is the jam. Appreciate the question, man. This episode is not going to go very long, guys. I can tell you that right now. In your opinion, which album is better, Soul Food or Southern Playlist or Cadillac Music? I don't really know nothing about you, Ace, but I didn't even know that anybody ever posed this question as though there's any doubt as to what the answer is. All right. Now, I want to start this by saying that I enjoy the Goody Mob a great deal. I also want to make clear that my favorite Goody Mob album is still standing. With that in mind, there are parts of soul food that I absolutely love, and there are songs on soul food that I really like. And there's a lot of stuff on soul food I can kind of let go, and I kind of think the beats on soul food could have been better. I understand it's a bit sacrilegious to question the beats of organized noise, but I do feel like the beats on soul food were not their greatest work. I mean, and don't get me wrong, there are beats on soul food that are pretty damn incredible. Cell therapy is an all-time great beat, right? Absolutely an all-time great beat. So I don't want to act like there's no heat on there, because there's heat on there. But son, have you ever listened to Southern Playlist Cadillac music before? Like, have you done that yourself? Have you ever like put on headphones and listen to it, or perhaps put it on a high fidelity speaker system? Because I feel like if you have ever done that, you never would ask anybody such a silly question. Like, I mean, Southern Playlist Cadillac music, you're not going to hear anything from me about what beat could have been better on that motherfucker. You're never, ever going to hear that. It is an amazingly composed record, considering one, it's done by teenagers. Two, it's done by teenagers. And three, it's done by teenagers. Like, it's absolutely, I mean, you don't think about that being a record by teenagers. It's absolutely a teenage record. And even though you can make the argument that so many grown men at the same time were talking about the same things that these cats were talking about when they were teenagers, because they were grown men behaving like teenagers. But I mean, the songs are well put together. The hooks are fantastic. There is a balance between precocious awareness and still having the fun of being young. And then the beats. The beats. It is just organized noise showing out track after track after track. I mean, as far as debut albums go, there are very few that are in the class of Southern Playlist Cadillac music. I would argue that might be one of the 10 best produced albums ever made. There's been a time where I've argued that it's the best produced album of all time, but I can't go that far. Not in the world with the Chronic. Not in the world with the Chronic. But it's incredible. So, no, which is better is Southern Playlist Cadillac music. And you ask which is better, in my opinion. This ain't really about no opinion, homeboy. That's an objective truth. If you got a problem with it, I guess we just got to go outside and fight. Appreciate the question. Let me see what else we got here. Does Bill Clinton have to go see Colin Powell? That is actually a very interesting question, because basically Colin Powell is living the struggle. Let me slow down just a little bit, because I'm sending a tweet out about answering this question, because I just had an epiphany, like as we're sitting here, and I don't want to deprive anybody of, hearing this as it happened. Because if you think about this, at first you're going to be like, this is crazy. And then by the time I hit you with just where the combination, the connection of the things comes through, you're going to be like, damn, I never would have thought about it like this. And you know what happened? Let me ask you a question. You tell me what you think about this, okay? Did you ever think that you would be in a situation where you could reasonably compare D'Angelo Russell and Colin Powell? Because what has happened here is that Colin Powell has just wound up in the same exact situation that D'Angelo Russell was in, where D'Angelo Russell has sent something that you don't need, or done something, or taken something that you don't need to have on your phone or whatever it is, and then somebody else wound up putting it out. Colin Powell is out here saying things on his email, thinking they ain't got no concern, and then the next thing you know, the world finds out about it. But just like D'Angelo Russell wasn't snitching, it ain't like he came out here and told. It's the same thing with Colin Powell. Colin Powell didn't come put this out here in the streets about Bill Clinton. He was just talking to somebody, and then he sent it out. But something that I think is greatly underrated about the Colin Powell email about Bill Clinton and the bimbos. And you know what's underrated about it? The fact that he didn't just say that Bill Clinton was doing that to the bimbos, is that he said Bill Clinton was doing that to the bimbos, and then he provided a citation. He gave a source. So if Bill Clinton did want to come fight Colin Powell could just slap him in the face with a newspaper and say, you need to go down there and you need to holler at Rupert Murdoch. He the one who told on you, not me. I just read it in the newspaper. What I'm supposed to do? Act like I don't read nothing in the newspaper? You're supposed to act like I can't see? Come on, bro. They the ones that's putting your business in the street, man. Don't come be bringing that nonsense to me. I'm calling Dan Powell. So, yeah, Colin Powell's in the same situation as D'Angelo Russell. So the difference is D'Angelo Russell's something like 20 years old. He got to answer to people. He got to answer to the locker room. He got to answer to the Twitter. He got to answer to everybody. Colin Powell does not have to answer to a soul. When is the last time that Colin Powell answered to anyone who he did not refer to as Mr. President? Right? Colin's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Colin got that gig as Secretary of State. Colin answered to the man. All right? The man. You think Colin Powell about to answer to Bill Clinton about this? Colin could be like, say I'm wrong. Say I'm wrong. But you can't, though. You can't, though. Because you know what you out here doing. You know what you're out here doing. In fact, at this point, I feel like Colin Powell might start talking that Jamaican. He's Jamaican, right? Yeah, he might get out there and start talking that Jamaican. You get Colin Powell salty. And I'd pay all the money in the world to hear Colin Powell talking that Jamaican. And just so you know, the reason I say talking Jamaican, that's a bit of an adaptation. Where I used to know this Jamaican dude in college. And there was really no telling what might set him off. And so one day, me and another cat were talking about that. And he was like, yeah, he did that same thing with me. This dude was from Dallas. He's like, yeah, he did something. Said, and then he started talking about some blood clot, talking that Jamaican. Yeah, and so he wasn't really here for that blood clot talk. Like I felt like there was some disrespect intended. I didn't even know what it meant. I just felt like it was wrong. But yeah, I mean, Bill Clinton, look, man, here's the thing about Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton's wife knows who the man is that she married. Something that I don't think is adequately discussed here is the prospect of Bill Clinton as the first gentleman, right? Because Bill Clinton better be out here telling kids to say no to drugs and all that other stuff that a woman would have to do in the same situation, right? That's number one. Number two, so what do you do with the fact that, like, have we ever had a first lady with a reputation of just like being out there in these streets? Because I can't think of one off the top of my head. I don't really pay that much attention to first lady history, but I can't think of the first lady that's just out here getting it in these streets. Because Bill Clinton does. All right. And so it could be almost like a fascinating look at kind of the double standard that if there were a first lady with the reputation of promiscuity of Bill Clinton, would they not be all over it? Except the thing is, it's not like Bill Clinton is just some dude. He used to be the president of the United States. Like, the thing about Clinton is, after the Monica Lewinsky thing went down, like, what else can you tell us? What do we not know? We know. So, like, you come with a story, ooh, Bill Clinton cheated on his wife. Like, who really cares? Who really cares? There's a joke I almost just told that I feel like I've gotten a little bit too famous to tell out loud. Every now and then these moments happen, by the way, where I do realize things that I can absolutely say when there wasn't that many people listening. Now we're just like, hey, you know what? That joke, just not worth it. Just not worth it. You think I'm about to lose it trying to make y'all laugh on this podcast I do for free? You got me mixed up with somebody else. Appreciate the question. Let me see what else we got here. Oh, come on, computer. Be a little more cooperative. What were your first memories of the blueprint when it first dropped? So here's the thing about the blueprint when it first dropped. Blueprint dropped on 9/11. Hey man, I was at a time in my life where ain't nobody had no money to be out here getting no albums. I ain't even had internet at the crib at the time. And you know how I know I didn't have internet at the crib at the time? Because I didn't have a crib at the time, and the crib I was staying at didn't have no stinking internet. Yeah, man. And you got to remember, like 2001, that's before this wireless thing got cracking. You had to be plugged into the wall, right? And so I just didn't have access to it. But anyway, when I first got around to the blueprint, by the time I did, I had been made aware that the blueprint had gotten 5 mics. Now, the thing about the source and 5 mics, and I do miss having like an outright standard in that way, even if it was based on the fact there weren't that many publications or whatever. The idea that we had a publication where if they said something, it meant so much that we all had to argue that shit if we disagreed with it, right? And so the blueprint got 5 mics. And I'm like, all right, 5 mics. So I heard that H to the Izzo, and that H to the Izzo was cool. And then I listened to Blueprint, and the immediate thought upon listening to Blueprint was, holy shit, he finally gave us the record we've been asking him to give us. Right? Like, he finally gave us an album with sincere, compelling introspection. Like, this is an album that goes beyond how rich you are and what a hustler you are. And we have gone to a place with Jay-Z that we haven't gone. And by the way, a place that we needed him to go because there was nowhere else for him to go just on being the greatest drug dealer in the history of the world. There was just nothing else there. Now, is Blueprint his best album? I went through a stretch where I said Blueprint was better than Reasonable Doubt. That was absurd. Reasonable Doubt. I mean, he will never sound better rapping than he did on Reasonable Doubt. It's time and place. Also, I will say this about Reasonable Doubt also, and this is not anything that I can speak to on my own firsthand experience, but I will tell you this. If, for whatever reason, you ever happen to have an opportunity to have a conversation with anyone who sold drugs on the East Coast in the late 80s and early to mid 90s, ask them about Reasonable Doubt. Like, apparently he captured their whole life, right? Like, there's a level of coding to this that most of us civilians will never have any real idea of or understanding of. But if you ever hear any of them talk about it, apparently Jay-Z just went up there and told their whole lives. Like, that's what he did. Just so you know. Appreciate the question. Let me see what else we got here. What are your thoughts about high-profile Black folks discussing urban communities' need for personal accountability outside of the confines of our own community, centers, churches, and barbershops? First of all, I could make the argument, why do you need us to do that when white folks is always in a line to do that for us? Number two, where does this idea come from that Black people only talk about the need for personal accountability in those places? Right? Where is this group of people that does not tell folks that they are responsible for themselves and their actions? Like, is there anybody that's accused of that other than Black people? Because I don't hear anybody else that there's this belief that they don't have an understanding that they are responsible for what happens to them. It is only something that Black people are accused of. Why is that? Like, do you think that anybody else struggles with personal accountability? Like, do you think that poor white people, that their problem is that they just don't have any personal accountability? Like what explains all these other poor people's situation? What is that, right? I just can never understand why it is that there's always got to be some jackass, sometimes black, sometimes not, that's got to jump up while we're talking about like racism, the real thing that's cooking this up. And well, we also got to look at what we doing wrong ourselves. I mean, why do you act like nobody ever does that? Like, people always drop that, like they're the one that's like, I'm finally going to be the one to tell the truth. Yeah, no, but you never heard this before. Like, thank you for dropping this amazing insight that no one ever had a chance to get their hands on. Like, really, where would we be without you, Ali? Where would we be? Great job. Don't really appreciate the question, but I'll pretend to because that's just what I do on the show. Excuse me. What's the critically acclaimed album you dislike the most? You know, I don't really have a lot of albums that like the quote unquote critically acclaimed ones. I don't have very many of them that I like dislike. There are many of them that I don't think are as good as advertised. So, for example, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. I think The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is overrated. I also think The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill has some incredible music on it, right? So I don't dislike the album. I just don't think the album is as good as the rest of the world would have you believe. But I'm trying to think, like, the one, I talk about this all the time. And I mean, I don't know if it's my fault. I don't know what it is. I've never been able to get the D'Angelo thing. I never will get the D'Angelo thing. And D'Angelo Voodoo, I mean, it's cool. I will just never understand why you guys love D'Angelo so much. And the thing about it is, it's not simply that everybody rocks with D'Angelo. Like, people I really, really rock with and people whose taste I trust a great deal. They love D'Angelo, absolutely love D'Angelo. And I don't know what it is that everybody's hearing that I'm not. Like, I've wondered if part of it is me not growing up in the church, because there's a lot of like the conflict of the carnal and the spiritual and all that nonsense and just kind of gospel rhythms and stuff like that or whatever. But I'll never get it. Appreciate the question. Let me see what else we got here. You guys ask the sports questions. It ain't going to get you nowhere. I don't answer those here. Why does the media want us to feel bad for the racist Trump supporters that Hillary called deplorable? All right, so here's the thing that everybody has to understand about the way this information is being processed here with Hillary Clinton and the thing about the deplorable people, right? The idea of being racist, basically somewhere along the way, if you got like ever in your life done anything to help a black person in any way whatsoever, even if it wasn't on purpose, basically folks are acting like you're not allowed to say that they are racist or what they're doing is racist. Like, I mean, those are the rules. Like, I work in a major media company. I see what goes on all over the place. People are just very, very reluctant to call a white person racist. Very reluctant to say it explicitly that a white person is racist. That's just what it is, right? And so, because racist has become this term that, and understand this also, that this is really like, I think you can make the argument, a discussion for white folks to have with white folks rather than to come to me. because racist is thrown around as an insult between white people in a way that I'd kind of love to see white people actually explain. Like Vox had this post about how the progressives shouldn't be so quick to do finger wagging and calling the Trump supporters racist, and then started kind of spelling out, well, here's some of the things kind of that people on the left do or whatever it is. But here's the thing about it. I didn't feel like she came to what the conclusion is that should be there, is that there are people on the left who are racist also. That being on the left does not absolve you of your racism. So like, as opposed to saying, yeah, you can't call those people racist because who's really racist anyway? Like a line in the story was about how there's no like shining red light that says racist. And I guess that you could make that argument if you're worried about racist being used as like this insult or this scarlet letter. But the level of racism is prevalent enough that you're a little too worried about like who is or is not called a racist. Now, with Hillary, number one, I think you can make the argument that there was some hyperbole at play, whether she wants to or not. Number two, if she's not using hyperbole, there's actually been some survey data that would indicate that some of the things she said are not far from true. But number three, I think Coach wrote this. You haven't seen anybody who argued against what she said actually using any factual basis to lay it down. Just saying it's a pretty damning indictment to say that this large percentage of the American population is racist. And not whether or not that statement is true, just to simply say that indictment would be damning, because racist is a thing that white people don't want to be called. But I don't know how much of that actually has to do with anything that involves black people, and how much of that has to do with like social norms and conventions. And so like this whole thing about whether or not she's actually allowed to call them deplorable or anything else, like, yeah, I imagine there's some people that have their feelings hurt by being called deplorable. But like, if you wilding out more about the deplorable than like the things that we see happening at these rallies, I think I saw something about a 60-plus-year-old woman with an oxygen tank getting punched in the face at one of these rallies, then you're kind of telling on yourself, don't you think? I think one could make that argument. But you can go look the stuff up, right? I don't really editorialize about these things. I try to stick on a factual basis as much as I can. But, I mean, they really ain't trying to get out here and call nobody a racist unless it's David Duke. And I'm willing to bet that before you call David Duke a racist in the newspaper, you got to call your editor and make sure that's allowed. Appreciate the question. Let's see what else we got here. Need some more questions, folks. Do you think artists like Kid Cudi and Childish Gambino aren't given credit because of talent, or the fact that white kids who, quote, don't usually, unquote, listen to rap make up the bulk of their following, so by association, they're viewed as lame? Sean, you can answer this question in the chat room for me, because I'm just curious. Like, are you a white dude who really likes Childish Gambino and Kid Cudi? I'm just curious. Like, is that kind of the source that gets us to this question being asked? Because I don't feel like anybody shorts any of those guys credit. Like with Cudi, when I went to the Outkast show that Cudi basically just walked out on, oh, and Sean says he's black. That surprised me. And there are plenty of black Cudi fans that are there. Like, yeah, the fan base is largely white, but I think that would be the case with just about every rapper. The thing with Cudi is you kind of got to be in the lane for that kind of emo thing that he's doing. And with Childish Gambino, I think it's kind of a similar place. Like, it's not like Childish Gambino was making music that was really geared toward a quote-unquote urban audience. And so I think when people ask, why don't they get enough credit? And I think the answer for why they don't get enough credit is some people just don't like their music that much. And I do think it's an interesting space to be in when you make rap that is largely liked by people who don't really listen to rap. And it doesn't like invalidate the rap that you make, but that's just kind of an interesting space to inhabit. And it's not like, and I don't feel like either of those guys make music that it is at all compromised, right? Like, it's not like they're doing some magic trick to make the white people like them. But I mean, I've seen Childish Gambino live, and yeah, man, white kids love him. That's his base. It's kind of a college crowd, and I think that that's kind of an argument you can make about both of them. Is that like their music is a college crowd in a way, is music for a college crowd that kind of in a way gravitates more toward white kids. But I don't think anybody's shorting either of them of their credit. Appreciate the question. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, yeah. We can do this. What do you think of Kid Cudi's rant on Twitter? Like, while we're still talking about that Kid Cudi guy. You know what I think about that Kid Cudi guy? I think that Kid Cudi was opening for Outkast in September of 2014. I think that Kid Cudi is a guy that I had never really cared that much about, but he was getting the Outkast co-sign. And not only was he getting the Outkast co-sign, he was opening for the Saturday night show. And the Saturday night show was the first show they sold the tickets to. So that's the one the real hardcore fans went to. And Kid Cudi went out there, and Kid Cudi felt like the audience wasn't responding to him because it wasn't his crowd. And that joker walked out maybe halfway through his set to the point where nobody even knew that he had walked off the stage. That's what I think of Kid Cudi's rant on Twitter. I ain't gave a damn since that day about anything that sucker had to say. Ever. I just could not, to this day, I just cannot believe that he got up there and he quit. And he got up there and he absolutely quit. Can't respect it. So yeah, whatever he said is whatever. Appreciate the question. Let me see what else we got here. By the way, guys, no, I have not seen Atlanta. I got at least one episode on the DVR, but I ain't got around to it. I be getting home from work and falling asleep, as you can clearly tell if you're watching this show live. Which city rides for their artist the hardest? You know, this is a very interesting question because there was a point where the answer to this would have been unquestionably, no doubt. You like who reps hardest for their artist? And the answer would have been not simply the answer for who reps hardest for their artist. It would have been who reps harder for their hometown than anybody in the world reps for their hometown. And the answer there is Brooklyn. Brooklyn. Like, we ain't got to call it New York City. We just go straight to Brooklyn. Nobody puts on harder for their area than Brooklyn did. But of course, we now have a problem, which is they don't be rapping in New York. And that's the issue. They don't really be rapping like that in New York. Like, I feel like they want to put on, but how they gonna put on? A$AP Rocky sounds like he listened a lot more UGK than he did anybody that's up there in New York. South 1, baby. South 1. Now, I can make an argument that Houston rides harder for their own than anybody else because Houston is one of those places where you can get rich without ever leaving. Like the number of cats that got themselves in a position to make millions of dollars selling all those tapes basically inside the 610 loop. Because Houston puts on for Houston, puts on hard for Houston. Appreciate the question. Which song would hurt the most if you found out the artist didn't write the song? So I'm assuming that this is a question that is very particular to rap because everywhere else there are all kinds of songs that other people write. Like that's just kind of what it is. But see, for me to be really offended that somebody didn't write a song, it would have to be something that was just incredibly personal, right? It would absolutely have to be something where I felt like, yo, you had to live that. That had to be your life. Like that had, I just can't see how anybody else could do that. And the answer to that question would absolutely be All I Got Is You by Ghostface Killer. If I found out that somebody else had written All I Got Is You, I'd have to quit. I'd quit it all. I would quit everything. It is an amazing piece of work. Just an amazing piece of work. And if I found out that Ghostface like had cribbed that off somebody else, I'd be done, man. There'd be nothing left to believe in. There would honestly be nothing left to believe in. Let me think what else just kind of jumps off my head that like, man, if I found out that somebody else wrote that, I would have to just turn it all in. Yeah, no, man. I don't think anything's topping that. I just don't think anything's topping that. Appreciate the question. Let me see what else we got. What do you think about the whole Nelly thing? Well, you know what I think about the whole Nelly thing. I told you the answer to this when we was talking about Nas just a couple of minutes ago. Hey, man, pay your taxes. Even if you ain't got it all, give them a call and give them some. Pay your taxes. The man is coming for your taxes. Come, they gonna find you. Like that's what you need to understand. They gonna find you. And so now everybody telling me they gonna go stream Nelly songs so that Nelly can get that money back. Forget streaming the songs. Can one of y'all put a Nelly song in a commercial? Nelly out here like, yo, Bud Light Lime-A-Rita. Don't you think Hot and Her would be perfect for your little product? Somebody can take a can and put it on their head and I am get some. I won't take my That's what Nelly needs. Y'all little streams ain't really gonna do the job. He needs to hit them a little bit faster. Because let me tell you something, that interest is actually compounded. Sorry about all this yawning. With no social media, how big of a deal was Tupac's death 20 years ago? See, I don't know why you think how big a deal somebody dying is really that contingent upon social media in one direction or another. Dude, Tupac died. I mean, and that's people calling up the radio station, sobbing like they knew him, like they absolutely knew him. There's never, I repeat, never been a rapper whose core fans related to him in the way that they related to Tupac. Like I always tell people, there's no point in arguing with folks about how good Tupac was or what they think Tupac was, whatever it is. There's no point because the relationship that people who love Pac have with Pac isn't about the quality of record or metaphors or bars or anything like that. It is just how much they love Tupac. And Tupac at that time was one of the two or three both like biggest things going in the rap game. Like I'm trying to think of who in the game right now, like it would be like if that person died. And I'm saying separate that from like the whole Pac persona, just for like how big Pac was at that time. Like people saying Drake, and I'm like, kind of, but not really. It's hard for me to explain why I'd say that. But I mean, it's almost like Kendrick Lamar got killed. You know, I mean, as people saying like Jay and Kanye, yeah, but the thing is, Tupac was 25 years old. Like you can't forget that part. The dude was 25 years old. And so like it played into all kinds of narratives that were already at play at the time. But it's, I mean, Tupac would be no bigger deal now than he was then. Like social media wouldn't make Tupac a bigger deal because the connection that people had didn't require people to be inundated with images of Tupac for him to become a big deal for them. All he had to do was be Tupac. And he was Tupac. But all right, sorry, we're going to cut this short tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here on the Evening Jones. We're going to do this Wednesdays at 9 o'clock during football season. Wednesdays at 9 o'clock during football season. My man Lance Gilliam handles everything behind the scenes. Thank you, sir. Remember, if you can't watch live, check out the podcast. Subscribe to the iTunes Store. Subscribe at Stitcher Radio. We're also at SoundCloud. We'll talk to you guys next week. Take it easy.